There's a secret that the financial industry doesn't want us to know, and it's that becoming a millionaire is actually really easy. If your parents would have invested $2,000 at your birth into the S&P 500 and never did anything else, you'd likely have $1 million when you retired. Just $2,000, one-time investment at an average rate of return of about 10%. That's it. All right, now let's look at what would happen if they would have taken that $2,000 and put it into a savings account at your birth. It wouldn't even be worth $3,000 when you retire 66 years later at today's interest rate. So this is a powerful reminder of why investing is so important. And when you factor in current inflation rates, that $2,000 saved by really conservative estimates would be essentially worth nothing when you retire. So the point is this: when saving, when the rates are really bad like they are right now, is going backwards with your money. It's better than wasting it, but if you really want to move forward financially, then investing wisely for the long term has proven to be the most reliable way to do that. So in this video, we're going to break this down. We're going to give you the surprisingly simple math behind what it takes to become a millionaire. And we're going to talk about how long it's going to take you, whether you want to go slow or quicker. Next, we're going to talk about some of the really practical steps to get there, as in how to find money to do it. And then we're going to talk about the absolute most important key to becoming a millionaire that almost no one talks about. One more thing, just to clarify a little bit of the reason behind all of this. So if you're part of the SeedTime community, like what we believe is that money isn't the goal, but it's a tool to fulfill what God has put you on the earth to do. And so that is the lens through which we are viewing wealth building and the purpose behind it. The goal is to build wealth, but to do it for the right reasons. Now, as always, I am not your financial advisor, so this is not financial advice. I know you hear this in every single financial video you watch. So this is simply financial education and some opinions and some pretty charts and stuff like that. So with that out of the way, let's talk about how to save $1 million. Trust me, you do not want to try to save $1 million. So even if you save $100 a month for the next 100 years at today's current interest rates, you will have $156,000. Save $100 a month for 100 years, and this is all you have to show for it. And the point is, pretty much no one is going to save your way to $1 million. What you need to do is invest it. Now we're going to look at some shorter paths to $1 million. So like we mentioned, the S&P 500 before, if you look back at the past 100 years of the US stock market, you're going to find that it's averaged somewhere close to 10%. Some people think it's going to be less than that in the future. Some people think it's going to be more than that in the future. But if we're just taking a 100-year average, it's about 10%. Of course, we never know what's going to happen in the future, but we have a pretty good track record to kind of base some estimates off of, and that's kind of what we're doing here. Now, assuming that 10% average continues and you contribute $500 a month, that's $6,000 a year to an S&P 500 ETF, then this is where I might expect to be. Now, looking at this from another angle, using the same assumed average return, this helps us see how the monthly contribution we make affects the length of time it takes us to reach $1 million. For example, if we were doing $100 a month for 45 years, that would get us to $1 million. If we step that up to $300 a month, it would be 34 years to get to $1 million. If we kicked it up to $500 a month, it would be 29 years to get to $1 million. Or if we were able to round up $1,000 a month to contribute for 23 years, then that would get us to $1 million. The good news is that anyone can do this. You don't need to be a financial expert. You don't need to be spending hours a day researching stocks or crypto. And it's actually far easier than the financial industry wants us to believe. And we'll get to more of that in just a minute. But let's first talk about how to find some money to invest if this is an issue that you're having. So I know some people watching might be saying, I don't have an extra $500 a month to invest, or even $100 to invest right now. And if that's you, I want to take a quick detour to give you some ideas on how you can possibly find a little bit of money to invest. So the fact is, there's really only two sides to this equation, two sides to kind of come up with some extra cash. You can reduce your expenses or you can increase your income. Pretty much the only two knobs you can turn to try to get some extra cash into your world. So we'll start with the first one. So number one, if you don't know exactly where you're spending your money and how much you're spending everywhere, we need to change that right now. So check out Personal Capital. This is a great place to plug in your information. And so you'll know exactly how much you've spent in the last month on eating out or Uber or Amazon purchases. It's an amazing app. It's completely free, and it's going to help you do all of this stuff. And once you go through this exercise, this is going to give you some ideas of what you could cut back on that you don't really care that much about. So my millionaire mentor taught me that there are two key areas that Americans waste most money on. He said the first one is their cars. And so you might know this, but between insurance, between gas, between car payments and repairs. There's just so much money that we put towards our cars. And so if we can reduce that, we can free up a lot of extra cash. And the second thing he mentioned was eating out. If you eat out every day, just by changing that habit and maybe just starting to eat out every other day, you could realistically save $200 to $500 a month just by making that one simple tweak. There's lots of potential here when it comes to all of our food and how we're buying it and where we're buying it and all these different things. And so we have a ton of other ideas on how to reduce your expenses in a lot of our other videos that I won't go into now. Now, I do want to flip over to this other side of the equation about earning more. And one of the simplest ways to do this now in the 21st century is just pick up a side hustle. Now, I know you probably don't want to grab a side hustle, but it doesn't even need to be that much. Like, you could just go deliver food for DoorDash for a few hours each weekend. I've read that it pays out $15 to $20 an hour. And if you did that for a few hours each weekend, that'd be just enough to earn $100. And then you have $100 to start investing and be on your way to becoming a millionaire. Another side hustle worth looking into is just doing Facebook ads for businesses. This might sound intimidating, but we millennials and Gen Zers who have grown up with computers have a huge advantage over some of the boomers who are still trying to use Yahoo to search for Google. Seriously, I know a guy who explained this to me. He's like, yeah, you get to Google, you go to Yahoo, and then you type in Google. So even if you know nothing about Facebook ads, a buddy of mine has a course teaching exactly how to do this. It's a great, simple way to earn some extra cash, or it could honestly even become a really lucrative career if you wanted to. So I'll have a link in the description if you want to check that out further. Or if you love animals, like you could pet sit. You could get paid to pet sit. There's a website called Rover where you can earn up to $15 an hour to literally play with a dog. Just by watching a dog for one weekend a month, you could fund your $1 million nest egg. There are a million ideas here, but these are just a few to get you started. Again, I have another video you can check out if you want a bunch more ideas of side hustles that you could try out. Now I want to talk about how to turn some of this extra cash that we've just kind of come up with into $1 million. So I spent the first 10 years of my career working at a bank in an investment services company. And unfortunately, it just really seems to be that there's this conspiracy among the financial industry to make successful investing far more complicated than it needs to be. And the truth is, it's actually ridiculously easy to succeed as an investor if you can just be consistent and patient. I still remember getting started on my investing journey and hearing this exact same advice and hoping that it was true. But if I'm honest, I wasn't sure that it was. I had really just hoped that my investing mentor and some of the other great investing books I had read, that they were actually right. And I can tell you now, being 16 years into my investing journey and having generally done a pretty good job of staying consistent and patient, I can say with confidence that this simple process works. This is a look at how our assets have grown since I first learned this from my investing mentor 16 years ago. So for new investors, this is kind of mind-blowing. I remember when I was first taught this by my millionaire mentor, and I just couldn't believe it. I really struggled to believe it. And I wondered why in all my 16 years of school, this was never part of the curriculum. I didn't understand why they never taught me this. And I'll just leave it at that. But here's the catch. There is risk. There is risk to investing. It's really important to understand that investing in anything, you can lose money. But that's where most people stop. They just hear, oh, if I invest, I can lose money. But the simple fact is you have money sitting in a savings account right now, and you're losing money because the inflation rates are currently about 7 or 8% right now, and they're just eating away at your savings every single month. And if you invest in the S&P 500, you will have years where you lose money. Just look at this chart. There are a lot of red years where your investment would go down, but over the long term, that money invested averaged a return of about 10%. So most recently in the spring of 2020, we saw the S&P drop by about 34%. And then by the end of the year, it had come back and then some. And sometimes it bounces back fast and sometimes it takes a while. But the key is to just stick with it for the long term. So that's the risk that we as investors have to deal with. But the thing I always remind new investors is that while a savings account seems really safe, is it really? Sure, you probably won't ever see your balance drop in your account, but if its value is being eroded away each and every day by the 7-8% inflation that we're currently dealing with, is it really as safe as we've been led to believe? Because right now, for the money that we have sitting in savings or cash under our mattress or whatever, we are essentially losing 7% of our investment into that savings account or into the cash in the piggy bank or whatever the thing may be, simply because of inflation. With that in mind, I want to look at one of the world's greatest investors' greatest investing advice. So you probably know Warren Buffett. I talk about him a lot, and for good reason. He's one of the greatest investors of the last 100 years, and just a really wise old man at this point. So his company, Berkshire Hathaway, is basically a mutual fund. And so he buys all kinds of different companies, and if you buy his company, Berkshire Hathaway, then you own a little piece of all those different companies. And since Warren took over this company in 1964, it has performed incredibly well. over the decades since, it has returned about an average of 20% annual return, which is simply amazing. And at the time of this video, like, Warren is about 90 something years old, and he knows that his time is coming to an end soon. Okay. So here's what I find completely fascinating. He shared what his instructions are for his wife in his will on how he suggested that the money is invested that he leaves to her. So what investing advice do you think that the world's greatest investor gave to his wife? I would think, all right, this guy is, one of the richest men in the world. He can hire 10 money managers of the best of the best to manage all of this money for his wife or all this money that he leaves her when he dies. That's what I would just assume that someone like him would do. But instead, his investing advice is very, very different. And so I was very curious, just as I hope you are. And so here's what he said. He said, put 10% of the cash in a short-term government bonds and 90% in a very low-cost S&P 500 index fund. I suggest Vanguard's. I believe the trust's long-term results from this policy will be superior to those attained by most investors. That's it. The simplicity of this is mind-blowing to think about. The world's greatest investor says this is what his wife, who doesn't know much about investing, should do with the money. And sure, she is going to be in a different financial position than you and I are, but at the end of the day, I believe Warren has the same fundamental desire for his investments and for his wife that you and I probably have, is that he wants to make them grow with as little risk as possible. And here's just a little bit more on what Warren explained about his rationale. He said, I laid out what I thought the average person who is not an expert on stocks should do, and my widow will not be an expert on stocks. And I want to be sure she gets a decent result. And the reason for the short-term governments is that if there's a terrible period in the market and she's withdrawing 3 to 4% a year, take it out of that instead of selling stocks at the wrong time. She'll do fine with that. And anybody will do fine with that. It's low cost, it's in a bunch of wonderful businesses, and it takes care of itself. Investing can really be this simple. But one of the hardest things as an investor is to not overcomplicate things. As billionaire investor George Soros says, if investing is entertaining, you're probably having fun and you're probably not making any money. Good investing is boring. Now, if you're curious about Vanguard's ETFs for each of Warren Buffett's suggestions, here they are. It's 90% Vanguard S&P 500 ETF, ticker symbol VOO, and 10% Vanguard short-term treasuries. VGSH is the ticker on that one. Okay, if you're finding this helpful, I would appreciate it if you help us out by hitting the like button. I mean, who doesn't like when you get a formula from the world's greatest investor? And my goal with this video is to help you see that investing does not need to be as complicated as so many people have made it. But if you take nothing else from this video, but begin doing this one thing that Warren Buffett recommends, and ideally in a Roth IRA, I believe that when you look back in 20 or 30 years from now, I think your mind is going to be blown. Like I said, I'm 16 years in on this journey, and that's certainly been the case with me. Like, it is mind-blowing how far things have come in just 16 years. And this one simple lesson could change everything for your financial future. So don't underestimate the simplicity of it. Now, I want to talk about the most important key to becoming a millionaire that almost no one talks about, and it is this: it's time. If you've been paying attention, time is the key factor here. That's why that single $2,000 investment at birth can turn into $1 million, because it takes 65 years. And it's also why if you want to hit that $1 million mark in 23 years, you need to be investing $1,000 per month. It's less time, so it takes a lot more money. But what's great is that time can do the heavy lifting for us if we let it. So this video has gotten a lot longer than I anticipated. And so you can take Warren's advice and run with it and do this for you and your kids. But if you are someone who wants a little bit more of a step-by-step process, we have a course where we go all into that. We explain exactly how to do this down to the buttons to press. We make it that simple. And it's called 10X Investing. And basically it shares everything that I've learned over the last 16 years that I've done and applied that have yielded 10X and beyond returns. So some of the returns being as high as 27X or one even 34X. And my specialty is making complex financial concepts simple. And so this course is easier to understand than some of my high school classes, And I also optimize all of our courses for speed. So it isn't a dictionary of terms and useless jargon that you don't need to know, but instead it's only the essentials that you need to know, and then the exact strategies, tools, and investments that I've used over the last 16 years. So if any of this sounds good, within about 2 hours of going through this course, you could be making your first investment with as little as $100 and be on your way. And to just sweeten the deal just a little bit, because I love doing this, for the first 7 people who enroll using the coupon code down below, you will get 15% off. So we'll have a link in the description if you want to check it out, or you can just go to seedtime.com/10x, and we would love to serve you in this course and help you on your journey. So one final thought or question here, and that is, why do you want $1 million? And this is an important question to consider. So we have another video you can check out where Linda and I discuss my 3 questions that I'm asking before chasing any financial goal, just to make sure my heart is right. And so we'll have that linked up here for you to check out.